Welcome to the Change Within podcast. This is Gerard Uselli speaking. We are on episode 19, and let me say, as the platform is growing, the walks of life are truly coming to fruition to express their platforms and how their change has impacted their lives. And this person is no exception to the rule. This is somebody who I really look up to as far as building something from the ground up for all of those members of his community to ensure that they have the best health, accessibility, and lifestyle in store. I want to introduce to you a very special guest, Sean Mulroney. Sean, how are you today?
What's up, Gerard? Thanks for having me, brother. I'm doing very, very well and better than I deserve.
Absolutely. And as we get into it for the first question, this is something I like to ask every single guest that's been on my platform so far. What was your
Sure.
childhood like growing up?
My childhood, um, you know, I let me go back. It was great but complicated, if you could say the least.
Right.
Um, I had, it had a lot of trauma, which is the very fiber of our being, especially, struggling and looking back at it, Gerard. I had my dad died when I was 6, and he died of lung cancer. So that was the first bout of it, and I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And growing up at that time, my siblings, there was a drug culture. We grew up in a not too good of an area, and anyways, from there, and I'm very vocal about it. I also struggled. I was sexually abused and molested, which really, changes your DNA. And it happened, went on for a few years, and then drugs. I got a taste of drugs at a young age, and by 13, I was, actively involved in drugs and alcohol. Played sports, and of course, my mom worked a lot. My two sisters, Angie and Terry, they helped, raise me and babysit me. And of course, they were going through, their struggles. They're late teens, early 20s at this time, and they were having kids and then having me. So I was tossed, all over. My mom remarried. My stepdad was a great provider, but he was also, mentally and verbally abusive, and I never felt like I fit. Of course, my next sister to me is 9.5 years older than me. My oldest brother's 18 years older than me, and so I felt, out of place a lot of times, and that's why I made, my teen years. I made a lot of bad choices. I had friends that died from drugs overdoses and drinking and driving, suicide, and I just got into the bad of it, or the downward spiral of wrong things. So that was my childhood. But be quite honest, it was great. I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, everybody that was around me did the best that they could with what they
Right.
had. It just, I got, put into this, situation and grew up in it, but my family made the best of it. And I never talked about my sexual abuse. It was a, teenage boy. Um, and they, I didn't want to, he told me, he scared me to death. He said, if I tell anybody, of course, he intimidated me and said that,
Mhm.
he would, end up destroying me and my family. And that scared me as a young boy. I'm 6, 7 years old, and it was just tumultuous. I mean, to say the least. And
I have a follow-up
a
question
rough,
to
rough
that.
time.
And I'm very
Yes.
curious about this as you are as you reflect in your childhood, even during those times, and maybe some foresight and perspective on this. Do you feel like even in your worst of times throughout your childhood, were you able to kind of see light at the end of the tunnel at a young age, or did you feel like that navigation itself was dark to a point where you couldn't even see the light at the time?
No, you know what, George? That's a great question. No, I didn't. I was always a positive person, if you could say. I mean, the things that affected me, could they affected me? And it affects people differently. I just had that outlook, you know what I'm saying? I was easygoing. I consider myself a clown, a class clown. My other friends did, to mock is to manage. And I always humor. My family's very humorous. Every one of them. My mom, my mom and dad were born in Dublin, Ireland, and so they came over here, and my two older siblings were born over in Ireland. And then, my mom was very witty. My dad, Irish people, you know what I'm saying? Of course, I grew up, my dad drank, quite a bit. My mom worked in a bar. But me, I'm optimistic. I mean, it's in my DNA. And I just always, felt that, hey, some people look at the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, I am the light. So that's how I was like looking at it. I would help people. I loved helping people and being there for people. And that's how I looked at it. So no, it wasn't dark, for me. Even the worst of times, the memories of bad, because I have a lot of bad memories.
Right.
And even through them, somebody asked me, Gerard, would I ever change anything in my life? And you know what? I wouldn't, because the very things that happened to me made me who I am today. So I wasn't really, it never really was dark. It just was like, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. So that's
And to
how I look at it. So,
to that follow up on this as well, because knowing that you are the light for yourself, which is a very positive outlook to have for the future that has brought to you where you are today. What was the first time you helped somebody and felt like you made a difference in their lives?
mm, great question. Um, I, a lot of friends of mine. I helped, a friend that was battling depression. Never fit in. I think this was in fourth grade, I believe, and he was struggling. And so what happened was, I took, he and I, got close and started opening up, and he, sort of turned his life around, not because of that, because just everybody was, exiling him, and he wasn't able to talk to anybody because he couldn't trust anybody. And for you think people think, well, what, a fourth grader? Yeah, a fourth grader. You know what I'm saying? And I remember, talking to him, and we got to talk about, long things. And it was like that battle that I felt like I felt like I could conquer anything, because me knowing that I could be there for somebody. And there was a lot of things. I mean, there was many times, and many times people were there for me. I mean, you get them friends, that that you have them, and that they are a friend. And some people come into your life for lessons, some for blessings. And so I felt that, it was my time, to help him. And I just felt great. And every time since, I mean, and that's just one thing that I can remember when talking to him. And there's been many things. And then going into my teen years, I remember helping a friend of mine and talking, her out of, not taking her life.
Wow.
And I remember, being there and saying, hey, she never felt worth it. And that happened all the time. Even me doing drugs and alcohol. The funny thing about that, Gerard, whenever I was doing drugs and alcohol, whenever I would get so high or get so drunk, I'd always want to come down, because I was too afraid to try other things in my life.
Interesting.
Yes, yeah, it is. And I would like people. I was there for people at that time. I felt it just a weird combination. And I'm a weird duck. I mean, I'm a, an outcast. You know what I'm saying? And that's good. Me, I'm like the island of misfit toys. On Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Nobody wants a Shawnee in the box. You know
Ah,
what I'm saying? And that's
good
good. I
analogy.
don't fit in. Yeah, I don't fit in well. But that's a good thing. So helping people, and then even my best friend John Martin, he was at a pivotal time whenever we first met. And I really poured myself in, and he turned his life, and just made the better. And I just did that. Even me, I used to until I had to come off the road because of my lymphedema and my health problems in 2009. I spoke in public schools about 150,000 students a year. And so
Also,
that's what I did. So,
Uh, well, I'm going to make a point on that too, because some of my career has also consisted of speaking in public schools. I used to work for the March of Dimes, and we would
nice.
do the Wonderwall campaign, which is the
Yes.
impact story of
Yes.
like what the Roosevelts did to start the foundation. So
Yes.
something
Yes.
that shocked me speaking to elementary school students was not only the intellect of them being aware of those types of issues and concerns surrounded by
Yes.
prematurity, but the follow-up questions they would have for me felt like the levels of what a junior high school to high school generation in my time, and I'm 30, would be at that point. So the level of intellect, social media surroundings, sense of information, and opportunity to
Right.
understand more, it makes things very interesting as you're getting
You're right.
yourself in front of students and they're
Yes.
able to really like understand, and their choices are the sense of like choosing to be ignorant on something or not.
Correct. Yes, that's a great point because kids are very astute. You know what I'm saying? And what I look at that teenagers, they're just young adults. They're little adults. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They just don't have their prefrontal cortex is not developed, and so they're just small adults that don't have the capacity to think. But I'm going to tell you what, teenagers have built-in lie detectors, and
Interesting.
they know if you're giving them the business or not. They know, kids the same way. They just have they're astute. They're sensitive. And that's what I did is I just went around school assembly since 1998, and I started a nonprofit called Teens of America, and we were helping that. So what happened was, Gerard, is that I that was my first pain turned into a platform or a purpose, because I took all the pain of my childhood and put it into a platform, and it built into that. Because listen, to be quite honest, what I'm doing and what I have been doing my whole life, I would have nobody would have seen that coming, because I had so many people tell me, even a teacher told me, that if there was a vote for the one least likely to succeed, I'd get that. That was in my 10th grade year.
Wow.
And so and it affected me, but it didn't, because I was aimlessly through. I didn't. People say you going to college. I didn't even know. Wasn't going to go to college. I wasn't going to do anything. I just lived fast. You know what I'm saying? And I partied and had a great time, and it just was that way. But here's what it is that I took all of my pain and made it into a purpose, that I started going in, and people used to think, "Wow, I can't believe you're doing what?" I used to go back in, my hometown where I grew up at, and I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. I was born and raised in the city of Pittsburgh, but I grew up and we moved outside this in the suburbs whenever I was about 8 or 9 or 8, yeah, 1979 it was. And so what happened was, um, people, I go back, they say, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And I tell them, and they go, "No, you're not." And I have even my wife, with me. We were in a Denny's, and a friend of mine came up, JR, came up to me, goes, "Hey man," he goes, because we played baseball together, we partied together. I sat there and he said, "Hey, what do you," he goes, he started cussing like in a way. He goes, "No, you can't be, do it. No way." And he said, "Who's this?" I said, "It's my wife." I said, "Tell him, Jess." And she goes, "Yeah, he's doing that." And so it just goes back to show you that I would have never, that people, when they count you out, you know what? I've always been, an outcast, an underdog. You know what I mean? The one, and I'm glad for that, because I don't want the accolades. It doesn't matter about that. It matters that me helping people. That's what I'm called to do. Is I'm called to serve people and help people no matter where they're at. That's what I live for.
It's kind of like telling your tarot card reader that you're in charge of your own future.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. That's right. That's exactly right. That's a good point.
I feel so kind of into the sense you introduced a little bit of your health issues as you were growing up. And it leads me
Mhm,
to a question because health is subjective and
mhm.
nobody is the same. So, to
No.
phrase this question accordingly, in the purpose of equity, in people being conscious about their health in all shapes and sizes, when did you realize you had a health problem?
Wow. Um, here's where it came to. I was healthy all my life. I never had an operation. I went to the hospital a couple of times for stitches, and the reason I had to get stitches is because I had 2 of my friends turn on me at a pool party, and they bashed my head in with a ladder from the in-ground pole.
Oh, man.
And so, yeah, I mean, so with friends like that, who needs enemies, you know what I mean? Or who needs a proctologist because
Yeah.
of that? But anyways, I went there. I think I was 15 or 16 at that time. And so what I'm saying is I never medicine, I didn't have anything grown up. I never took an antibiotic. Never, you know what I'm saying? I was, pretty healthy all my life. And constitution is important from, what you get from your genetics. And so anyways, I played football and baseball. I excelled at that. I played drums. Music was my life. Got into a band, several bands. We did really well, and so I'm saying all that to preface this, that I was I started getting hefty, having to shop in the what you call it, the hefty zone, it with clothes and stuff like that, and I was always functional. I always had probably about 10 or 11 whenever I started getting more weight on me, okay? And I never was too big. I use that because I played the line in football. And so 21 comes, I turned my life around at 21 years of age, right? And I did an about face, did a 180 and started, making strides, and I put, a lot of stock into what I was doing, how I did that, gave all that past up, gave everything up, and went to college. Um, and so when you go to college, you start eating bad. So when you gave up drugs and alcohol, I mean, it wasn't like you just eat bad food. I mean, who doesn't love food, right?
Of
I
course.
mean, who does? I mean, you got 180-pound people that eat their like they have a hollow leg, and they have a metabolism of a hummingbird, right? And then what happened is just because you think about it, is that we think, well, a person that's obese, how could you let that get? How could you let yourself get that way? Well, I was always functional. I was always portly. I was, a bigger type person, and I was fine. I got married in 1998 to my lovely wife Jessica. We've been, it'll be 23 years that we've been married. And so what I consider myself, when I went to college, man, no sleep. Sleep's so important for your health. Sleeping 3 hours a night. Working, going to college, and then guess what? What about food? You're eating fast food every meal. You're eating when you can. You don't have a schedule, and you're not keeping a schedule. So I began putting on more and more and more weight. And in 1998, I was in the upper 300s. And functional obese person is what I call that.
Right.
There's different levels of obesity, but that's a functional obese person that, they have their mobility, but they don't have any health issues, and they're going about their life, right? Well, what happened was it wasn't until 2000 that I was speaking in Louisiana at some schools, and I got real sick. I thought I got bit by a spider on the inside of my leg, and it was all red, and I had a fever so bad,
Mm.
and I felt horrible. And there was a nurse there, and the guy who was hosting me said, "Hey, why don't you have her look at it?" And I said, "Okay." And she looked at it, she goes, "No, no, no, that's not a spider bite. That looks like cellulitis." I said, "What?" And I didn't know what cellulitis was. And anyway, she said, "Well, when do you get?" I said, "Well, I fly out tomorrow, to get back to St. Louis." And she says, "Okay." She goes, "Well, before you go," she goes, I work at a doctor's office. I'm going to get my doctor to look at you before you go on the plane. because that could be dangerous. That could turn into a blood clot, and you don't want that. So I went to the doctor the next morning, and he said, "Yeah, that's cellulitis." Put me on antibiotic, and off I went. It cleared up, and then what happened? I started getting cellulitis all the time in my leg, and what it would do,
Oh
it would
my
swell
God.
up, and then it would go down. It would swell up, but it would never go down all the way until it formed a mass on the inside of my right leg, and it started getting hard, started oozing, and the infection started getting worse and worse, and I'd get them, put them on antibiotics, things. I was still traveling, and I'd even have cellulitis, and my leg would, not being disgusted, would ooze even while I was traveling, and I had to wrap it up and all that stuff, and I did it. But in 2004 is whenever it sort of came to a halt. So from 2000 to 2004, mind you, remember I was in upper 300s. Well, this kept on going, and this mass kept on getting bigger to where my clothes was starting to get tighter, and it started going up into my abdomen, all that stuff. And then whenever I was on antibiotics, and so the antibiotics weren't working. I was taking Cipro, and as I was taking the Cipro, it just like it was my leg was turning black. Okay, and the I started getting blisters all over my body. And Jess, my wife, said that doesn't look good. We got to do so. We called a friend of ours that's a nurse, and she goes, no, he needs to get to the doctor ASAP. And so every time I'd walk, a blister would pop. And so I went there, and the doctor said, no, you need to go to the emergency room. And this is the first time I've ever thought about that they were going to admit me, and in my life. And I never stayed in the hospital, never overnight. And anyways, they put me in. They go, no, we're going to admit you. And I go in there. They start working on me and everything. And so there was a scale on the bed, and my wife and I were in the room, and she's like, well, I haven't been weighed since I don't know how long, since I was 98, 99 or so, or 2000. And she put the scale. I was 567, Gerard. So I went from the upper 300s from 2000
Mm.
to 567, and all because this mass and everything like that, and everything combined. Poor eating, eating fast food, eating, drinking caloric drinks. That's what I did. Is I drank pop, soda. I could drink at like, it was, just guzzle it. And so, drinking your calories is the worst thing you could ever do. And
It is a
it
very
just bad.
unfortunate reality. I will
It
say
is.
that
It
much.
really. It is, Gerard. And so what had happened was, even tell my wife that she's over there, and she's like looking at me because she drinks her calories, and but she's looking at me in a bad look right now. So excuse her if you can feel that. If looks could kill, I'd be dead right now. So anyways, so all that to say is that I was drinking my calories. Well, I was in the doctor's, and the infectious disease doctor came in, and he looked at my leg, and he goes, hey, he goes, and I was starting to get blisters in my mouth. And he asked me, he says, do you have a sore throat? I said, yeah, real bad. He looked at it, he stopped everything abruptly, with the IVs that I had in my arm, all that stuff.
Mm.
And all of a sudden what he said was, he said, stop. He goes, when'd you take your last dose? I said, I told him. He said, here's what he said. He said, if you would have taken your one more dose, he said, you wouldn't be here. What happened was I got Stevens-Johnson syndrome. And what that does is starts attacking your organs, and you have an allergic reaction to the antibiotic. And it started going in there and shutting down my organs, and it was going into my mucous membrane. And once it goes there, you're done. And so he reversed everything on me and saved my life. But I got out of the hospital. Of course, I'm still alive. And after I've been in the hospital, I've had 20 infections since 2000, severe
Man.
infections, and I've been in the hospital 14 times and almost died 3 times. Once from the Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and twice from sepsis. And I had a white blood count of 28,000. The normal blood count is 7 to 10,000. I had a fever of 104.9. So all of a sudden it took on and all this weight. And then the highest record I had, that I could remember getting was 687. And I believe I got into the 700s. And so it was a perfect storm, if you will. It was all the bad choices from the childhood, the drug abuse, all this thing. My fat tells a story is what I how I say it. That I just didn't get here by, eating food, you know what I'm saying? I'm not a food addict. I have a bad relationship with food. I don't binge eat. Have I overeaten? Yeah, of course. I mean, I didn't get here by breathing air and drinking water. I got here by making bad, but there's also other things, and that's what people don't understand about obesity. It's so complex, genetics, abandonment issues, abuse issues, drugs, alcohol, all these things go into us and
Even
they make
deprivation
us who
in a
we
lot
are.
of ways too.
Yes. 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 Big time. And so nobody ever talks about that. So people just automatically assume, oh wow, well you need to just stop eating. You know what I'm saying? Or yeah, you mean that?
That's
Well, think about
band-aid to
this: a
cancer
drug
talk.
addict, that's brother, or baby aspirin. You know what I'm saying to
Right.
somebody that has a terminal illness, exactly. And and all that to say is that people that haven't been there or walk in my shoes, they don't understand it because they just say, well, how did you let yourself get that fat? Well, let me tell you, let me go. My fat tells a story. My obesity tells a story that here I am, I'm going through this life. I made this because you think about it. There's people that are perfectly look good health wise, but they have a poor diet. They have bad things. And so people assume that the worst that, hey, well, just eat less and move more, you'll lose weight. Well, wait a minute. Are you serious? And then lymphedema, I don't just have one weight loss, Gerard, I have two. I have a fat weight loss and I have a water weight loss. I can gain if I get an infection, like last year I got an infection in May, during the pandemic. I gained 65 pounds overnight of water fluid
Hmm.
because I retain fluid because that's what lymphedema is. My lymphatic system does not work properly. So
Right.
was it the chicken or the egg? And what I firmly believe is that I had that cellulitis, and that cellulitis that I had lymphedema, but what that did was it ignited it, or it opened up the cisterns for me to get that lymphedema, which was a big culprit. And that's where it's at, and that's what I'm saying. It's shedding light and sharing my struggles of obesity, not just the highlights, because think about this, going to the gym is one part, my diet, my meal plan is one part. I'm so much more than my weight loss. I'm so much my obesity does not define me.
Of
You think
course.
about it, but there's people out there that do define me because of my obesity. And I don't let that happen. That's up to them. And you know what? I my obesity has been my frenemy, if you will. It's been a friend and it's been an enemy. And the reason why it's been a friend is it kept me away from fake shallow people because fake
Yeah.
shallow people automatically wrote me off and they don't want nothing to do with me because of my weight. So that's where it's at.
Well, I'm also going to say this too. I feel like with the obesity revolution, you've made momentous strides in making sure that there's an inevitability that this isn't going to go away, and
Right.
you're making that revolution to ensure that people can fight this no matter how uphill their
Right.
battles are going to be. How
Right.
did that start? How did that journey start to know that you wanted to create a revolution?
Well, put it this way, I didn't do it on purpose.
Hmm.
It was so here's what happened. I man, there's so uh, it's like whenever you do that, it's like you share your story, it goes to a movement, and it goes to a revolution. Well, what happened was, Gerard, it took my wife and I 12 years to have children. Okay, I have a 10-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And when my first daughter was born, I mean, she made us parents. Maddie, you know,
It's my
that
mom's name.
Maddie,
Yeah.
awesome. Yes, it's a great. So her name's Madison. Everybody calls her Madishon because she's her father's child. I mean, she and I mean, she's just awesome. She made me a dad. And so cutting that umbilical cord, man, started getting real. I mean, not only is it just me and my wife, and I wanted to do that. And you know, you can't lose if you're not going to lose weight for anybody else. You got to do it for yourself. If you don't do it for yourself, but there's other things that come in there that your why gets manifested, right? So Maddie was born in 2010. 2014, Libby was born, and I cut the umbilical cord. Man, I was able to hold my precious girls. And
Man.
then 2016, on December 26, 2016, Mackenzie was born. And each time they were born, it was like it was getting real. It was like I would say, I want to be there for them, and I want to walk them down the aisle. I want to, I don't want them to remember me in pictures. I was thinking, as they were babies, I was like, if I die right now, they're not even going to know who I am. They're not going to have a memory of me. And so when Mackenzie was born the day after Christmas, 2016, I was sitting there with her and taking pictures. And anyways, we left. My wife, stayed. She had to have a C-section. My mother-in-law took me and my daughters, and she took the two oldest and backed her home so I could probably get a nap. Well, I didn't get a nap that day. Reason being is that there's a gym about 3 miles away from my home, and I called the gym, and I just got on. I was like, "This is it. I'm ready. I'm ready to do this." And I called to look for a trainer because I got turned away. About 30 trainers turned me away, that I tried. It wasn't that I haven't tried, but they just don't. The health and fitness industry knows nothing how to work with obese people. Doctors are dismissive toward us. Everything we get, if we get a hangnail or our finger hurts, it's like you need to lose weight. That's their answer. Everything that it's dealt with that. Well, and I love the medical industry. I love the health and fitness industry, but obese people were treated subhuman and were treated like, well, you let yourself get that way, just like I said before. And so I called the gym. There was no trainer there, but there was a receptionist, and I dumped everything on her that day. I felt bad, but I was like, I got to do this, and I
But
needed a
enough is
gym
enough.
close. Yes, yeah. So I was like, and if she either was going to say, I don't, like be, oh, well, or she was going to care. Well, she ended up caring. She had a lot of empathy, and she says, "Oh, Sean, I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm going to leave this on a trainer's desk, and you'll get a call." Well, I thought, okay, yeah, right. Anyways, hour later, I get a phone call from my trainer that's been working me for 4 years, Brandon. And Brandon called me. We talked for about, probably a half an hour or so that day. And he says, "Well, I want to come meet you." And he's like, "Well, when can we meet?" I was like, "Well, this week's pretty hard. My wife just had our third child." I goes, "Oh, okay, okay." He says, "Well, how about I come to your house?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "My house?" Yeah. He goes, "How about tomorrow?" I said, "Okay." So we scheduled a time. He came over to my home, and we sat down for about 2.5 hours. And he looked at me and said, "Hey," he goes, he goes, "You're ready for this, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am." He says,
Got to
"Well, I'm
follow
gonna take you." What's that?
Got a quick follow up to that. So I was kind of
Yes,
listening to what you were saying with your trainer and his wife
yes,
having the third child. Do you feel
yes.
like you having your third child and him having his third child was kind
Well,
of like a
he didn't
synergy
have
compelling
well,
to
he
that?
didn't have a third child. He just had his second child just
Oh,
recently.
gotcha.
Yeah, so I was talking about me. I'm sorry. He wasn't even married yet at that time.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. So yeah, sorry. Yeah. Sorry for the misunderstanding. No,
Oh,
he
no
wasn't
worries.
even married at the time. But he's married now and has two
Uh,
children. But no, my third child is what sort of nudged me to call that gym. Okay, But he came over the next day on the 27th of December and we met. He says, "Hey, you're ready for this." I said, "Yes, I am." He says, "Well, I'm going to take you on." Well, I didn't notice at the time, but he wasn't taking any clients on. And he said, "I'm going to take you on." And I said, "Oh man, really?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "That's great." I go, "How much is that going to cost?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to take you on for nothing." I'm like, "Are you
Mm.
serious?" I'm like, "What?
Whoa.
Okay." I was like, I couldn't believe it. Okay. And anyways, he said, he goes, "Well, let's start. Let you get settled in. Let your baby come home and get settled." And so my first day in the gym was January 10th, 2017. And that was the hardest thing to get to the gym, man. Had so much anxiety. I mean, I haven't worked out in years, Gerard. I mean, it was, since, and I just, I went, and that was a big step for me to do that, right? And so Brandon took me on, no cost. And so whenever that day we were in my living room, I said to him, here's what I asked him. I said, "Well, Brandon," I said, "have you ever been overweight?" He says, "No, not a day in his life." And he went to
Mm.
4 years of college for, all this, and studied and did everything. Physiology, science and nutrition, all that stuff. And he says, I said, "Well, have you ever worked with somebody my size?" He said, "Never." And I said, "Well, how's this going to work? You never been overweight. You never worked with anybody my size." And here's what he said that changed my life. He says, "You want my help, right?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Well, you want to learn from me." And he says, "I want to learn from you." He says, "Let's learn together." And I was like, wow. And he worked with high performance athletes. That's what he was training. And he never thought, "Hey, I'm going to be working with obese people." And whenever that happened, it sort of spurred that, I went to the gym that day on the 10th, got my workout. He just wanted to do an assessment. He lied to me about the assessment because he had me do a full workout. I mean, I
Oh wow.
know because my fingernails were hurting, my hair was hurting. That's how, I mean, he had me do the battle ropes, right? I mean, I was like, man, that battle ropes gives you a full body workout. I mean, you're going, you know what I'm saying? And so anyways, I got, and here's what I did. I said, "Here's what I want you to do." I said, "I want you to take a little video of me doing these battle ropes." And he says, "Why?" Because I said, "I want to share it with my family and friends on Facebook to put myself so far out there that I can't come back." And he's like, "Okay." So I did that and I posted on January 14th. Well, little did I know what happened was it got 1.3 million views in 24 hours. It went viral.
Very compelling.
Yes.
Very compelling.
And so people all over the world were just reaching out and saying, "Go, wow, you got this, you got this." And so what happened was that year, I lost over 100 pounds that first year.
Big
And my
congratulations on
story,
that. That's a major
well,
feat for
thanks.
that year.
It is. And it's been a battle. Weight loss isn't linear because if I was thinking, okay, I'm in 4 years, I'll be down 400 pounds and I'll be at my goal weight. Well, that hasn't happened, Gerard. I mean, there's all kinds of, bumps and things and, bruises and all that stuff, but it's good. It's the process. I mean, I've learned to trust the process. I had to get my mind set. Years ago I tried every diet under the sun, but what happened is I tried to get my body in shape before I got my mind in shape. And if you do that, you're going to fail every time. If you get your mind in shape, what the mind believes, the body achieves. You know what I'm saying?
That is a
And we,
very powerful statement.
it is, and you know what? I had to do that because you being obese it messes with your mind. Not only am I physically obese, I'm mentally obese. I've been like this for years. I have to change that, trust the process, figure out what my next step is, and learning small steps. That's what I came to is a statement he said one day. He said, "Small tweaks lead to great peaks." Well, if you don't make micro changes, see, the reason I failed so many other things is because I tried to put everything and give everything up at one time, do this and do that, and then do this workout, give this, eat, right. And then all of a sudden, I'd have one day and I'd have a flat tire. I'd slash all other three tires. And then I would just give up. And so what I'm doing is I found out, and we found out what the obesity revolution is all about, is do one thing for 21 days, give it up, and then continue. Give one thing up, boom. Add one thing to your life, boom. Add one thing, one step. Focus on the step that's in front of you instead of the whole staircase. Because what you're going to do is you focus on the whole staircase, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're not going to be in this to win it
Well,
at
that's
all.
also very reflective of just American society with work-life balance. And
That brother,
yeah, you
you're
speak to a
true.
culture of just like borderline
Instant.
demonic essences of how people think. And if they're
Yes.
working 24/7, and I know
Yes.
there's a lot of like counter activity towards this now as well, but that's also a process as far as how you live your best life.
Well, you said it. Is that we get in this, we want instant gratification. And instant gratification kills us. We have instant, cereal. We have, instant coffee. Just add water. Well, that's not going to work in life. Life is, it's a rough. I mean, it's life is tough. Who you going to see? We're our own problem or we're our own solution. Well, I either stand in the problem or I stand in the solution. It's my choice. And so what had happened was after that was all said and done, that 100, I was glad I met that 100-pound mark. You know what I'm saying? It was great, great feeling. And Brandon had to learn a lot too because he's like, this is challenging. Well, here's what happened. My story started getting, taken off. Good. I got featured in Forbes that year. They did a New Year, New You type thing, and my story was the main story on their New Year, New You thing. And then Fox picked up my, Mandy Murphy here in St. Louis, who is one of the greatest, anchors and interviewers on Fox here, and she picked up my story, shared my story 5 times, did feature stories on me 5 different times.
That is such a rarity to even get something twice shared on a
It is,
network.
brother.
5 times is a
I
huge deal.
it really is, and I've been featured in. I was on the biggest morning show in the UK, This Morning UK, 25 million viewers. It's like the Today Show here in America. I was on all these. I mean, hundreds. I mean, of podcasts. I mean, I love doing. I want to get the message out, and I am not bigger than life, and I don't care. And 20 million views later, and upwards to all my videos that have went viral, and I have a video that has 9 million views by itself. And I have another video that had just reached 5 million views. Level Fitness, I mean, started picking me up. I mean, all these different stories, NBC, radio shows. And so what happened was it just started taking off that I started sharing my struggle online. And that's how it was. I'm like, I'm sharing the struggle in that. And so people just started saying, "Man, I wish I would do that." And they started their journey. And so what happened was, when my Fox interview was coming out, they came there to the gym all day. They filmed me at my home. They filmed me at the gym. They interviewed Brandon. They interviewed me and my wife and all that stuff. And here's what happened. When that happened, Brandon came to me and here's what he said. This is after a year of us working because that story got featured, I think, November of 2017. Let me see here. No, wait a minute. November of 2017. Yes,
Yep.
exactly. Because it was almost a year later, get messed up with the dates, but yeah, November 2017, November 2nd, 2017 is when that story aired, and that's the one that got 9 million views. That story went viral too. And so what happened? Brandon came to me, goes, "Hey, I got an idea, Sean." I go, "What's up?" He goes, "I want to take on 4 new clients that are reaching out because I would share, hey, this is so and so reaching out to me. They're struggling with obesity, and people don't realize that there are probably 30 million people in America that never come out of their home because of morbid obesity, because of immobility, because of health problems, because they can't move, and the reason why nobody knows it's that bad is because nobody sees them and they're afraid to come out. Society doesn't accept us. Society has put us into that, mold and say, "Hey, you need to stay there. I don't want to hear about this." And so what had happened was Brandon said, "Hey, I want to take on do a contest if Mandy will do it at the end of the interview." And sure enough, she did. And he's like, "I'm gonna take on 4 new clients for 6 months at no cost." And so what we did is he said we need to do it was they had to write an essay. And so at the end of the Fox interview, Mandy told them, and hey, you go here to sign up. We had 500 people sign up like that,
Whoa.
just like that. And we went through them, and I was reading the essays, and they just started hitting so close to home. And then Brandon, same way. And then so what we had to do, we couldn't choose because it was so hard that we had a team. We put a team together and broke them down into groups. Okay. And what they had to do was come up and give we were coming up with the top 10, that the finalists, and then Brandon was going to choose the 4 out of those. And so the 10 that they had, we put the team that we gave them a batch of 100 or so, and then they had to read them and come up with the one that they picked and picked that out. So we came down with 10. And so anyways, Brandon called them all and said, "Hey, happy to tell you, this is Brandon Glore. Happy to tell you that you are one of the 10 that was chosen, and I'm going to make my decision to pick 4 of you, and just wanted to let you know." And they were so excited. And he got through that list, and he came back to me. He goes, "Sean," he said, "I can't take on 4." I'm like, "Oh, what is it? Is it just too much?" He goes, "No." He said, "I got to take on all 10." And I was like, "Really?" So he took on all 10, which was almost a year to the date. We met in January 2018 with all of them, the ones that could make it. Some of them couldn't make it to the gym locally because they were immobile. Steve had lymphedema in both legs and hasn't been out of his chair in house in years. And so he had to come, and he had to, by video, we had to video him in. And everybody, they all came to, every one of them had anxiety. They were, had terrible time, getting there with the struggle and everything like that. And so, anyways, that day we had our meeting that day. And so how the name the Obesity Revolution came about was somebody in one of the comments of one of my videos said, "Sean Mulroney, the leader of the obesity revolution." That's how it came about. And so what
Wow.
happened was we called them, and they came 10. And now there is so many, one lady, Stella, has lost 258 pounds. And Steve, he's down 150 pounds. So collectively they're down close to, I think, 3,000 pounds altogether, of the 10 that Brandon took on. And then all of a sudden we started that a program. And then what had happened was it went from my story to a movement, and then to a revolution. And now we're affecting thousands among thousands of people, and have a support group meeting and everything. So it went by me putting myself out there, and then it turned into what it is today.
I'm going to ask a very off the cuff question, but I'm very curious
Yes.
to hear your answer on this. So, with everything that you've done with the obesity revolution in terms of your impact, what's one number that that you could recollect on that you feel like carries its own weight the most?
And what number? What would say that again? Let me have that
So
soak in
as
again.
far as like on your impact and numbers and things of that sort, like however your statistics match up with the impact that you've made over time, what's one number do you think like carries its own weight the most?
Wow. I'm I don't know. I mean, I guarantee it that we've reached a million people that have probably started their journey some way or another, and have done something about that, that have reached out into ones that we don't even know about, and that people have reached out and said, "Hey, I started my journey. I started going to the gym," and then they'll send me a picture, and they said, "I lost such and such a weight." And so it's, man, Gerard, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I lost. It's not just about the weight that they lost. It's about the life they're gaining. So the people that have reached out and that are doing something, and I see that effect of them, that they're still doing it and still in the trenches of their weight loss, and they're not being discouraged. And it's like it's immeasurable. I mean, it's like, to quantify that. I mean, it's like I had to stop counting, I guess, Gerard. You know what I'm saying? because it's like it
Yeah.
got bigger than I, if I felt like, wait a minute, I'm not going to tally this up. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else will keep outside betters, but I felt about, well, if I'm not so concerned is that people, they want to be an influencer, right? Well, you know what? Let me say this. I say this all the time. Being social media famous is like being rich in Monopoly.
Huh. Y- I could that see, you know how you were kind of like stumbled upon like the question I asked you? As
Yes,
I'm processing what you're saying, it's making more and more sense.
correct. So here's the bottom line is that putting a number on it, I feel like people aren't numbers, and not how do I man the people that seek for that they want to be an influencer, they want to be so and so. I say don't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because there's a lot of pressure. You know what I'm saying? There's pressure on me. I gotta, it's good for me though, because it keeps me faithful, it keeps me honest, it keeps me, on that even whenever I'm struggling, I still have to be that forefront. You know what I'm saying? But even so, just the last couple months, I took a sort of a step back, and I'm trying to get. I have to go to a whole other level now to figure out what my lane is, because if you don't stay in your lane, you're going to fail. If you don't do what your strengths are, and if you start get focusing on your weaknesses, you're going to fall on your face. And that's what I've had to do. Is that it's gotten so big to the fact that, okay, the platform, we have a membership, that they can come in as a VIP, and we have our pillars that we do that. Why do we exist and stuff like that? And I found that out is that it's more about, okay, we want to create awareness and kill the assumptions. And so what I'm saying is I don't care about having millions of views. Is it great? Wow, man, you had no, wait a minute. I want that to be millions of people. If one view reaches one person, then I'll take the millions. But if I'm just doing the millions just to get endorsements, or look at me, I'm, this, I have 1.2. Well, guess what? Numbers, it's overrated. That's what I'm saying. I have monopoly money, but monopoly money's not going to get me anywhere. I have media, social media views. What good is that if I am not helping others?
I also think in the sum up of everything that we're talking about is that glory isn't the only pathway towards fulfillment.
No, bro, Gerard, you said it. If you're seeking glory, you're going to be very disappointed.
Oh yeah.
You are going to be disappointed. That's why people that are social media influencers, what I do. Here's the thing. What you see on my videos is what you see right now, and what you see in my home. I don't put on airs. I don't make things look good, say, okay, here I am, you know what I'm saying? Look at me, and putting on, this, you know, putting putting lipstick on a pig, if you will. It's not, that's not what this is. This is real life. I mean, the struggles that I have day in and day out. Last week I fell in my bedroom. We had a flood. We had flood because our pipes were frozen this last week because our storm. And the we had a flood in our bedroom, and the carpet was wet, right? Well, what had happened was I fell on the wet carpet, and I fell on my back, right? And I couldn't get up because my feet were, it was like ice in there, and I couldn't get up. So my wife had to call the paramedics to come help me because I still my lymphedema. So you know what? Here's the thing. I can say, "Look, man, look at me. I'm going to the gym." Yeah. I go to the gym, I work out, but what about showing the things, that the struggles that I am going to show that video? And I did that and showed the paramedics that got here that day, is that I still have those struggles. I still, what does my life consist of? is that this is the struggles of an overweight person that I don't want to just show the highlight reels. You know what I'm
I
saying?
think that's such an important sentiment to like possess too, because we the things in your life are much more important, good or bad, than just the sum up of it. The experience is something you need to go through as a person in order to make sure that when you reflect on something, that sum up is well consolidated, not even just about the good or bad, because that could also be a little bit redundant as well, but then
Yes,
also how you're able to move forward. The progression is more important than anything.
it is. And the ups and the downs. You know, if I am listen, here it is. There is great strength in vulnerability.
Yes.
And you don't have to be perfect to inspire others. You just have to show other people how you deal with your imperfections.
Yeah. Speechless. Just absolutely speechless on that. It's something that many people struggle to do as far as how they put themselves off the cuff, especially in a sense of like broadcast recording and what you, but it's essential to do nonetheless.
Well,
And
in my faith is so important. You know what I mean? My relationship, with my God. I mean, I don't push anything on anybody, but that's part of me. That's part of my journey that I share with it. And that great there's strength and vulnerability, Gerard. You know what I get that from is that it's a Bible principle. Jesus said, "Yet when I am weak, then are you strong." You know what I'm saying? And he says, "My strength is made perfect in your weakness." So whenever we get that weakness, when we're at our weakest, then God's at his strongest. And so I put that is that not to push that's me. Whatever works for anybody works. You know what I mean? You find your path. That happened to be my path. And that's my faith is what turned my life around whenever I was 21 years of age. That's what I did about face. I found it, I got it. And so what I'm saying is that everybody has something that they have to do in order to achieve their goals. And there is no one size fits all, period.
there you have it. And I know you were talking from before that you wouldn't change anything within your life to get to where you are today. But what I do want to ask you as a final question that I do typically ask for all my guests as well
Mhm.
is, what do you want your future to look like within the remainder of this year?
I want my future to look like this year. I just got my lymphedema pump from LymphaPress, okay? And my lymphedema has been a little out of control. It just goes, it has a mind of its own.
Hmm.
My lymphatic system, whatever, all that stuff. So here's the thing. I've been searching, wanting to do this, and everything came together. It was like everything just lined up perfectly for me. It's like a $10,000 to $12,000 pump, right? And what it does, you go into it, it's built for me. It's built for people up to 750 pounds. And you get in, and what it does, it massages your lymphatic system, and it's like a sleeping bag that you get in. Well, I've been wanting this. I had a different pump, but the pump didn't work for me. It wasn't conducive. It was measured to me, but didn't work. I got that like in 2009, whenever I was getting lymphedema therapy at a hospital here in St. Louis. And so what happened was I just got this pump, which is so revolutionary and life changing that my insurance covered the full 100% of it. And I just got it delivered on last Tuesday, and it has been amazing. I'm getting ready
That's
this
so
week.
awesome to hear.
It is. I mean, and I'm getting my representative here is coming over this week and going to show me how to use it. He's been on vacation, and so I'm even having an interview with LymphaPress on Monday. LymphaPress is the one that did that, and it's just how all these doors have opened because you step through one door. You know what I mean? You go, you trust the process, and sometimes the best thing we can do is wait, right? And I don't want to be the Kool-Aid man. Oh yeah, you know what I mean? Running through, making walls, holes. I tried to do that, and I'm an impetuous type person, but I have it sitting right here, and I'm gonna get. That's my one thing that I have to focus on this year is my lymphedema. And what a great start to get that I'm going to be able to get into it every day and it is going to help me to get my lymphatic system going and also to decrease the lymphedema that's in my leg in order to help me with my weight loss. So that's what I'm looking at, is that me to get that in order and make sure I focus on that and trust that process. I have it now. I have no excuses, and then I'm going to make it one step at a time, and that's how my year looks this way, is to get my lymphedema finally under control better and more, because so I don't have to keep fluctuating and going back and forth, because that's what I've needed. So that's how this year looks, is my lymphedema. I my leg, my lymphedema on my leg, I call him Herbie. I have a lobule down there. I call
Herbie.
him Herbie. Yeah, because he's been living on me rent free for forever, and Herbie's going bye bye. I'm sending him an eviction notice, and
you
he's
literally just
done.
read my joke. That's what you did, and I'm very proud of you for saying it before I did.
Well, yeah, so he said, and so he's going bye bye, Gerard, and I got to get this. I mean, I'm just tired. You know what I'm saying? And got so many things, and being 100, on this, is that my wife. If I didn't have my wife's my biggest supporter, and my wife takes care of me and there for love, for better, for worse. You know what I'm saying? She said, people can say, well, when somebody says, you didn't sign up for this. Well, whenever you get married, when you say them vows, you do sign up for that. It's better or worse, right? Richer for poorer. And so with my wife is a life changer. She's a doer. That's her love language. She doesn't have to say she loves me. She shows me. And if I didn't have for all these years, Gerard, no telling where I'd be. But that's the thing. My family's first. First and foremost is my family. I focus on them, but then it's time that my lymphedema, Herbie, say bye to Herbie. You might meet him, but he's done.
Well, I will say this as a final talking point. It's very redeeming and so sincere to hear that you have the rock in your life, and knowing what the nucleus is for this year, how to solve your problems. And with all that being said, this wraps up the final episode. I mean, the 19th episode of the
No,
Change Within
don't make it the
podcast.
final.
First
You
little
got a
stutter on
good
my
thing going.
ending on that
You
one.
got a good
So,
thing going.
but
The Change Within podcast needs to keep going. Don't say
I
that.
was
Don't
gonna
ever say
say.
that.
So what you pretty much did was you reinstalled my theory. So I couldn't thank you enough for that one.
Well, you're Gerard. Thank you, and it was great being on with you today. Seriously. So, and
Really
hope people
appreciate that.
get the change within. You know what I'm saying? And thank you for allowing me to share my world with everybody.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, thank you very much and have a great rest of your weekend.
You too, Gerard.
You got it. Bye bye.